12:10 a.m. And yes, it's been a minute. It's been a while. I did a video last. That's because I've been between some traveling. So as we know, presently the U.S. Closed Chess Championship is going on in St. Louis, and we have the U.S. Open Chess Championship, where you can play regardless of your sex, whether you're male or female, and then we have the U.S. Women Chess Championship, and of course we have a crop of the best players in the United States participating. A number of them fresh from the Budapest Olympiad, where I think the U.S. came second in the male, in the open section, and they came third in the female section. So it's a it's a very tough competition going on right now at the chess championships. So and I think after 8 rounds, Carona is leading the open section with I think 5 points out of 8. Yeah, and of course Carissa Yip is, annihilating everyone in the female section. She has 8 out of 8. And today I'm going to actually go through 2 games. Probably, if it's possible, we can check out a third one. But we're going to go through 2 games. And the first game is between Alice Lee, who is a very strong IM, and I think she was one time the U.S. chess champion. Yeah, I'm not sure. She is white against the renowned Irina Krush, GM, several times U.S. female chess champion. So this is a very interesting game, and is actually a King's Indian defense. Interestingly, I played this line. I played this line on the white side, but recently I've been playing the same line on the black side. So I have an idea of what this open is about. And, well, let's get right into it. So the game started with the move d4, played by Alice Lee. Now, Alice is rated 2395, while Irina is rated 2388. Like I said, Irina is a GM, Alice Lee is an international master. So d4 is played, knight f6, c4 is played, g6. Now we have the fianchetto coming up with the bishop coming on g7, and knight c3 is played, bishop to g7, e4. Now we have the King's Indian defense on the board. Now, almost all the time after the move e4 is played, you have to play d6. Why? You don't want this pawn harassing your knight, forcing your knight to a not so good square. So d6 is played, bishop to e2. Now this is a very interesting approach, and I think like I said, I play this line on the white side because I think there's this chessable course Grandmaster Swiss Darius did that I really like. Very, very nice. So bishop e2, the idea is to delay castling. Bishop e2, bishop e3, depending on what black does, and then white can just go for a very fast kingside attack. Queen d2, bishop e3, queen d2 just castle long, and white is just crushing. So if you're playing against this setup, you really have to be very careful. You can't just sorry, excuse me, what did I do there? Sorry, we don't need that. Yeah, wait a minute. No, we're not talking about Twitter here. Sorry, we are not talking about Twitter here. We are not talking about, yes, sorry about that. No, we're not talking about Twitter or X or whatever they call it. So we're talking about King's Indian defense here. So white pretty much delays castling, and tries to check out the way black comes up with ease or a setup to actually come up with how he or she, the white pieces now, is going to approach the position. So bishop e2 is played. After the move bishop to e2, castles. Of course, black normally castles. Now comes the move bishop to e3. Like I said, there's a chessable course on this line by Grandmaster Darius that I really like. It talked about a number of positions from this line, which, check it out. White almost always has an advantage. So bishop to e3 is played. Knight bd7. Knight to f3. e5. e5 is played. After castles, queen e7. Now, the knight beat d7, e5, and queen e7 is actually a line that Grandmaster Gawan Jones talks about in his own chessable course. You know, it's interesting. You're studying a line where it tells you what to do as white, and then there's another strong grandmaster telling you what to do exactly that same line with white. You know, so at some point in time, this is what I say. You know, with chess, it's about what you're understanding. You know, how can you put all this information together and make the best out of it? So, queen e7 is played, rook to e1, c6 is played. Actually, normally we could just play c5 right away, trying to force white to either capture or push the pawn to d5. But instead of this position, GM Irina played c6. And it's a nice move because by playing c6, you're stopping the knight from going to the square d5. And you could actually play c5 at some point if this pawn goes to d5, because then there is no knight jump attacking the queen on e7. So c6 is played, d5, now c5. Now after the d5, c5, the move is played. Now the pawn structure is fixed. Can we see the pawn structures is fixed? So once the pawn structures are fixed, the next thing you're asking yourself is, okay, what are your pieces doing? You know, what part of the board do I want to create some play? So you have to try to play based on the pawn structure and the number of pieces you have. Like, what are my pieces doing? Where are my pieces staying? What can my pieces do? So looking at the pawn structure, it gives an idea here. Black has a pawn chain of d6, c5, d6, e5. White has the c4, d5, e4, d5. So we really can't tell if we should play on the queen side. We can't tell if we should play on the king side. How can we tell? The way our pieces are placed will give us a very good idea of what to do. So let's continue with this position. Knight e2 was played. Very, very interesting move. Now, the idea of knight d2 is to make sure that, number one, we don't allow the knight g4 jump into g4, you know, putting pressure on the bishop on e3. So by moving the knight to d2, we're clearing the path for the bishop and the queen to keep an eye on that diagonal. And like I said, in this position, white always sometimes just go for a very fast attack. But in this situation, you cannot do that. Why? Because you're already castled. So knight d2 is more of a preventive move, stopping the knight from going to g4. And then I think what white is going to try to do is play on the queen side. Playing on the king side, like with the move g3, g4, I don't know what you're going to really achieve much, since you have your king on g1. I don't think that's a smart move. And I think black will really applaud you for that. So let's keep going. King h2 is a very good move. King h1. Now, the idea of king h1 is to vacate the g8 square for the knight. And in the line I was telling you about, the one Gawain just did, the idea is knight to g8, bishop to h6, get rid of this bishop. Because of the knight, you have a knight on h5, the knight can go jump to f4 and put pressure on white's position. So, another idea behind the bishop knight g8 to trade off the bishop is to lessen the effect of the bishop on any kind of queenside play later on in the game. So let's see how this game continues. a3. a3 is of course, it's a very natural move. Now white is pretty much trying to pawn storm on the queen side. White is going to create play on the queen side. And if you see the way white pieces are placed, white pieces actually have some influence on the king side, and it does also have some influence on the queen side. But if you look at the knight, you could tell that the knight has more influence on the queen side than the king side. So that means already we have like 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that could create play on the queen side. Now, if you look at the queen could also go to the king side, or the queen could come to the queen side. So that means we have more pieces going to the queen side. So what's the point of all this? Anytime you have your pieces set up, if you have your pieces more concentrated on a certain part of the board, that's exactly where you want to create play. Okay, let's keep going. Knight to g8. Now, knight to g8 is a multi-purpose move. Now, one of the main reasons is to, of course, support the bishop to h6, exchanging of the bishop on e3, and also preparing the very interesting move f5. Well, I should say the very logical move f5. Because in this position, black has to create play somehow. And when I say create play, I mean you have to engage your opponent. You have to remember, chess is a war. So you have to engage your opponent. And the best way to engage your opponent is use the pawns first and then the pieces. So the knight going to g8 is a very, very logical and logical move. That's what I'm going to say. So let's keep going. So b4, pressure on c5. Irina plays f5 immediately. The idea is just to play f1, trap the bishop. Personally, okay, I'm actually not checking the engine board. Personally, I just switched on the engine mirror. But personally, I would have just played b6. And now, what black needs to really do is just maintain the pressure on the queen side so that there cannot be any breakthroughs. As long as there are no breakthroughs on the queen side, black is fine, because it's almost always impossible for white to stop the common attack of the black pieces on the king side. So in this situation, f3 is played. Now f4, bishop to f2, b6, because anytime there's a capture on c5, excuse me, you actually want to capture back with your pawn, the b pawn, not the d pawn, because then you don't want, the pawn push, the knight jump, you don't want anything messy. So captures on c5, knight captures on c5. I really wasn't sure of that move. If I had the chance, I would probably capture with my pawn, not the knight. Hey, I'm just saying, if I had my choice, I would capture with the knight, with the pawn, because I really would like to have as many pieces as possible on this king side. So knight takes c5 was played. a4. Like I said, white has to play on the queen side because he has more pieces on that part of the board. More pieces. So the more pieces you have to open up. And black has just 1, 2, 3 pieces, maybe 4 on the king side, And he has majority of pieces on the king side. But the ironic thing with this position with the black pieces is black has to start to make some contact with the white's position. If you don't, you're going to get crushed, really. I mean, if you don't do something very quickly, you're going to get crushed. And I always talk about this anytime I do my videos. Like, when there's a play on opposite side, you always want to see whoever gets there first. And it doesn't really matter if the kings are on the same side of the board or on the opposite side of the board. Anytime there's a play, that means white is trying to create some play on the queen side. So if white can make a contact, make some exchanges before black does anything on the king side, black is going to be in trouble. So let's keep going. Although white already made a contact with the moves, take, but not such a big deal. But let's keep going. So bishop d7, black is trying to finish the development. a5, keep going. I gotta open up the position. And the idea is, with this contact, pawn takes, this pawn becomes a weakness. We exchange up the rooks, we start putting pressure on that weakness. And meanwhile, black is yet to create any kind of play on the king side. Black is in trouble. Even though the engine says like plus 0.6, black is in trouble. If you don't make something happen as quick as possible, you're just going to get blown off the board. So a5 is played, bishop to f6. Now that looks like a move that black would want to be proud of, because now with the move bishop to f6, bishop h4 is possible. What's the point? If it takes, queen takes back. We have g5, we have h5, you just got to do something. You have to do something. So bishop f6 is played, captures back, rook captures back. Now, white has been able to open up play on the queen side, but black is yet to do anything. The engine says it's 0.2. Remember, we are not engines, we're humans. So, when you play, you have to play on, your play must be based on principles, not just about the opening theory and all that. You have to play based on principles, So you have to know what to do, when to do, and stuff like that. So, and queen to b1. Simple chess. Note that white hasn't made any move on the king side at all. Just left everything, just waiting for any time black decides to open up. And that's another key thing. Never move a pawn whenever there's an attack on that side of the board. So white has been able to isolate a pawn on b6. Now the pawn is a target. It's as simple as that. So white is just going to put pressure on that pawn, try to overwhelm this pawn, and then come for the next pawn. And before you know it, black is just in, deep problem. So rook to a6. I wasn't really sure about this move, but it kind of makes some sense to me because rook here will be very passive. Because then we can have moves like queen to a2, with the idea of queen a7, rook to b1, and that's really, really strong. So rook a6 is played here. and queen to d2. What's the point of queen to d2? Probably trying to exchange up the rook that is protecting the pawn on b6. Knight to h6. Still, black is yet to make any contact on the king's side. Remember all these things. These things are very, and these are strong players, These are not parties playing. Rook to a1. White is exchanging off the only piece that is protecting the weak pawn on b6. Captures back. Still, no attack on white's position. So don't be surprised at the result of this game. Sometimes, saying that a game is equal doesn't mean it's going to end in a draw. Because, how a game evolves is actually going to tell, who's winning and not. And sometimes, your nerves can just fail you. In a totally equal position, your nerves can just fail you, and then there's really nothing you can do about it. So, of course, queen a7 attacking the weak pawn on b6. And that's all been the plan all the while. Just open up the queen side, put some pressure on some weaknesses, and that's it. So queen a7 is played. Bishop, finally, black made a move. Bishop to h4, threatening nothing really. Probably maybe bishop takes, king takes, queen check, king comes to g1, maybe queen e1 check, knight comes back. It's this knight can start jumping as well. We don't want that. So what does black do here? White says g3. He says, calm down. Don't rush me. Okay? So bishop goes back. Now the threat is pawn takes, threatening to take the bishop on f2, threatening to take the knight on d2. So white says, well, I'm going to move my knight away. Note that I didn't push the g pawn, because then that I allowed this, and then all of a sudden white is being engaged, engaging black. And once you start doing that, you're going to lose your focus of what exactly you're trying to do on the queen side. So he just plays g3, just trying to maintain. So he moves the knight back, still trying to defend the king's position. The king is really fortified. So finally queen goes to d8, defending the pawn. But if you look at this situation on this king's side, there is really not a lot of things that black can do based on white's position. This queen is so dominant compared to the queen on d8. And even though we have the same equal number of pieces, white's position is just much better. Much better. And if you look at it, if you can't create any play on this side of the board, then what exactly does white have? What exactly does black have? So let's keep going. Knight to b5, putting pressure on d6. And I really don't know. I really don't like knight b5. If I had the white pieces, I'll probably take this knight. I don't know. Bishop, I'll probably take this knight. The idea is just to take, and then, my bishop can come here. I'm just going to have to forget about the king side and just concentrate on holding my weakness on the queen side, and then see what white can do about that. I don't think white is going to be able to do much. So after the move, knight to b5, h5. When you're playing chess, it's very important you are able to assess the position rightly, because one wrong assessment is just going to make things go worse for you. Black should pretty much forget about trying to attack on the king side, because it's not going to work. Because think about it. Okay, you're trying to attack. At some point in time, you're going to have to move your pieces, especially your queen, to try to create some play. Or even if when you get here, these guys are waiting for you. These guys are waiting for you. And then when you get here, guess what's going to happen to this pawn? Guess what might happen to this pawn? And then, then what? So that's another, knowing chess theory is good. Staying focused is good. Your decision making is very important. Your decision making based on every position. What should you do and why? You have to be able to look at the position and say, okay, in this position, this is what I have. Do I have any king side play? Not necessarily, because even if I start one, my opponent can always hold on to it. So what else can I do? It's always very important to identify the weakness you have or the strength and then use it. If you know you are worse in a position, try to hold the position together for as much as possible. And if you think or know that you're better, try to make that advantage count. Because if you don't do that, then you're not just going to get anything from it. So let's keep going. Knight c7, cutting the queen off the defense of b6. Once this pawn on b6 drops, there's going to be problem. There's going to be problem. Takes on g3, takes back with the pawn on h2. h4, threatening, nothing really, because if you take, I can take back the bishop, I can take back with the knight, not a big deal. But this b pawn looks juicy. Let's take that pawn first and see what happens. So queen takes b6, and knight goes to a4, attacking the queen on b6. Queen goes back to a7, defending the knight, putting pressure on the knight, although you can't capture the knight because it's defended. So, but you have to remember something. White is up a pawn. White is up a pawn. Bishop, knight to c3, attacking the bishop on e2. Bishop goes to d3, defends the bishop. Now, knight goes to d1, attacking the bishop on f2. Bishop goes to b6. It's interesting the bishop is on b6 because there used to be a pawn on b6. Now there are no pawns on d6. So the immediate threat is there's knight to e6 very strong. Oh, I think knight e6 is very strong, right? Because you're trying to take, if it takes back, queen takes, it's just winning. So queen to f6, making away from the pin, moving away from the pin. Interestingly, this position is still kind of even, based on the ancient analysis. It's kind of even. So now knight goes to e6. Now that's a very important move in the on the white side of the KID. What's the point? Because with knight e6, you pretty much exchange this bishop off the board, one, and then you stop every pressure on the light squares around your king. So after knight to e6, still trying to win a piece. The threat is knight takes, whatever takes. I think there's queen takes d7. So queen takes f3. Now this is where Irina threw this game away. Queen takes f3. I have no clue why that move was played. Maybe she had some time pressure. Looking at this time, it says she had 5 minutes 41 seconds. That's a lot of time. And our opponent has 16 minutes 20. So that's still a lot of time. So I don't know why, because that's just a one move blunder. And after that move, queen takes d7, you lose a piece. After the bishop moves to h6, trying to defend the dark squares, bishop to e2. What's the point? If you take the queen, the bishop here, I'm going to take here, and this is just pretty bad for black. This is just pretty bad for black. So queen takes on e2, queen check. You have to make sure every move you make is a check. King h7, queen takes check. King goes to h8. Queen takes g6, attacking the bishop. Now I'm just threatening check and mate. So this bishop has to move somewhere. But remember this, wherever this bishop moves to, make sure you're defending the g7 square. Because if you're not defending the g7 square, it's pretty much over. Bishop e3 check, knight bishop takes e3, and after this goes, after the bishop captures white's and wins, black resigns because you cannot stop checkmate on g7. You cannot take back with the knight, it's not going to be a check, and then this is just over. So, sometimes, I don't know, your performance is not so much about how, your theory, but sometimes it might just be the state of your mind. This is not a game Irina should have lost. Probably she got distracted or whatever the case may be. But anyway, let's move to the next game I want us to check out. Now, this game is an interesting game. And now, one thing I'm going to say about this game reminds me of the game between, GM Christopher Yu and Caruana. So why am I saying that? Let me just give you a brief assessment of the similarity. The game GM Yu against Caruana, which that was actually the game that got him, thrown out of the tournament because some issues happened. All of a sudden, probably you thought it was a chess boxing thing and he misbehaved. But whatever the case, you is a kid. Let's remember that. But whatever it did was not a cool thing. So Yo was totally winning against Caruana. Totally taking out Caruana. And Caruana is the number 2 rated player in the world. Somehow he found a way to lose that game. And of course that game really pissed him off. So what's the similarity between that game and this game? Now, in this game we're about to check out, Yip played a very quiet defense, nothing spectacular, and White pretty much just beat up Marcel. You're gonna see what I'm talking about. White pretty much just really beat up Marcel because there was really nothing Carissa Yip did in this game that says, okay, you know what, she made some very excellent moves that led to her winning. So, and let's see what I'm talking about. E4, G6, D4. Of course, we know this to be the modern defense. Anytime you move the pawn to G6, bishop G7, that's the modern defense. It's a very flexible defense. It looks like a King's Indian defense, but of course it's not, because you know with the King's Indian you have moves like this, you have moves like that, then you have castles. So bishop G7 is played, knight C3, A6. Now think about this: G6 is played, bishop G7, A6. Absolutely nothing. Black is just trying to play chess, right? Okay, F4. White gaining some more grounds, right? D6, another pummel, D6. Absolutely just nothing happening, nothing going on, okay? So, knight F3, knight D7, another passive, knight D7, think about this. Knight D7, okay? Bishop to D3, another, good move. Although I would have preferred maybe bishop to C4 or maybe bishop E3 first. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with bishop D3. Now C5, now black strikes the center. The threat is to win a pawn. Bishop E3 defends the pawn. Knight to F6, knight G F6. Knight G4 is possible. I think that's the only thing apart from the fact that knight is just developing itself. Takes on C5. Knight to, I like that in between move. I like that knight G4. Probably in this position, what I've taken, probably I would have moved my queen to D2. Yeah, it's not even, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but queen D2, maybe queen D2. So take on C5, knight G4, hit on the bishop, and of course trying to get the pawn back. Bishop to D4, trying to exchange up the dark square bishop to ease the pressure of the dark squares. Takes, knight takes on C5. Now, still very, quiet game, nothing much happening. There is queen E2, there is castles long, and white is just looking good. So, queen E2 is played, castles, H3, knight goes to F6, castles, even though the engine said it's even, 0.00. But I like white's position because it's easier to play white's position, really. It's easier to play white's position. White can just go for, B5, there's E5 possibilities there, F5 possibilities there. White has, it's easy for white to play this position. So here, black plays B5. After B5, I probably would have made a move like E5. Because if it takes, I can throw my knight to C6, with the idea of either taking back with the knight, taking back with the pawn, attacking the knight. Once you can just force your opponent to respond, you're going to be in good hands. So after the move B5, knight goes to B3. I don't like that move. Knight B3. So I mean, you're probably threatening knight takes, bishop takes. Of course, that will marry. Yip will see definitely. So knight B3. After the move knight B3, the engine says black has an advantage, minus 0.4. After knight B3, because here, why am I suggesting E5? Now you have to, white is fully developed. All the pieces are developed. All the pieces are. King is safe. We can't say that about black. So when you're up development-wise, what do? You open up the position. It's not the time to start maneuvering because you have that extra time that you can use. So like I said, I really like the move E5. If you take, there's knight to C6, I can take back, and then my bishop has that possibility. I get my rook away. White just has a very easy playable position. So knight to B3, I'm not so sure about that move. The reason I was, comparing this game to Karana and Yo's game, this is one of the reasons. At some point in time when you're playing a play that is really good, either the player is really good or they are having a very good result, you get really intimidated. I tell you, you can't just, those good moves will not come. I tell you, for some reasons, you will not be able to make those good moves. So, and I think that could be the result here because remember this, at this point in this tournament, Carissa Yip has scored 7 out of 7. Think about that. She's scored 7 out of 7. So any person, no no matter how strong you are, playing her, you are going to get intimidated by the result she's already had. So she already has 7 out of 7. So I mean, and I'm sure she's looking to have a perfect score. Will she make that happen? We don't know. We're going to find out. So knight b3 is played. Knight to a4. Interesting move. I like that move because the idea is, although the engine says not good, but like I said, we're not engine. The idea is, if you take pawn takes, the knight moves, have a3. If you push these, you have the weakness on b2 you have to deal with. I can get a bishop e6 or bishop b7, rook to c8, put pressure on the c file. And I think Carissa is just trying to create some complication, really. And why? I don't know. But if that's been working for her, why not? So the move knight to a4 was played, and after knight a4, knight goes to b1. All this moving back. I don't know. If I was still a very strong move, because this is the thing. If you take, I take back. I don't really have to worry about this pawn right now because I'm attacking your knight. If you move your knight, if you capture, then I'm going to capture back, or I can take. I've possibility. Now I'm actually can get to this king very quickly. But if you keep moving back, but you can understand she's moving back. Carissa is on 7 out of 7. So, like I said, sometimes your opponent you're going to get intimidated. So knight to b1 was played. Now queen goes to b6. What's the idea of queen b6? Nothing really, except for the fact that you're moving your queen off the back rank, which is a good idea, because at some point in time you're going to have to connect your rooks, and then you have to centralize your rooks. The knight on a4 is looking good. Knight on f6 defends the king. We need to get this bishop in the game. Probably b7 is good, putting pressure on this long diagonal. So what does white need to do? Just get your rook, centralize your rooks, and just keep pushing your pawn. Maybe if after the pawn gets to g4, you want to play e5. So if you move, you want to continue with this pawn push. You have to open up this guy. You have to open up. And the quicker, the better. There is no way black can open up the king's position right now. Nothing. There's really nothing black can do based on this king. So how did this game go so wrong for black? For white. Let's keep going. g4 is played. Bishop to b7. h4. Now, the idea is pawn push, open up the h file. Knight goes to c5. Still, no threat really. So knight takes. Now I don't like that knight takes. But what else could? Oh, this is attacked 3 times. And you don't have the time for this because this is coming. See now. So we have problems here. So knight takes with the pawn. Now the bishop here is having some difficulties, some breathing difficulties. What could white play here? Can white just play c3 and step back? Maybe just try to hold your position. Don't do anything desperate to, put you into any kind of situation. White instead said, I'm just going to play e5. I don't know if this was an oversight or white felt I had enough to create some pressure on this black king. Now, this is where I say, when you're playing either a strong player or someone that has a very good result, you get so intimidated that you feel, somehow you make a move like this and then the game is just pretty much over. After the move e5, black is completely winning based on the engine. And tempo first, getting time on the bishop on d3. So, take the knight, takes, getting the tempo on the queen. Queen takes, bishop takes a1, h1, take on e7, attacking the rook. The rook moves to e8, takes the rook. Now, the position is so simple that, now look at this knight on b1, not doing much. If you can get in the game very quickly, maybe something can happen. But then you see, the thing is, you really don't have anything here. You really don't have anything here. Remember, your opponent now has 2 rooks, which can easily get doubled and exchange of this, your active piece. And then what do you have? Nothing. So, this is how the game continues. Knight goes to c3. Rook, exactly what I'm talking about now. You're trying to just trade off the rooks, remove all the ability to wage war, as we say in Nigeria. So, rook a to e8, rook to d1. Say, wait a minute, we got to trade rooks, bro. You can't. We got to trade rooks. Knight d5, queen to e6, g5. It's just a little too late now because the position is so open. This is where the rook operates the best, when the position is really open, and especially not against the knight that needs close combat. The knight is not going to get that in this game. Rook takes, queen takes, king to f8. What's the point of king f8? Moving away from this checks. For example, if the knight goes to f6 right now, we can just bring the queen here, check. And if the king goes inside, then we can just slide all the way down, thread into take, mate. If you come back, we take, and then we just win. So c4, well, anyway, takes, knight check, queen to e3 check. Now, the idea of c4 is to make sure that the king has some luft. Still trying to get this knight checking, but then this knight check doesn't do anything. It's just one check, Excuse me. It's just one check, and after that, I don't think white is going to get much from that. So queen check, king goes to e2, c2, sorry. Queen goes to f2 check, king goes to c3, rook check on e3, king captures, queen takes f4 check, queen goes to d4, rook, queen takes check, king captures, rook e2, rook to e2. Let me say something about that. It's easier for white to create a pass pawn on here. Not that is any big deal, but principle-wise, you always want to go for where your opponent has more. These guys are not really going anywhere. So rook e2. Although the engine says rook h3 is played, but I'll probably go for rook e2. And if the king moves there, then I can just come here and start from the back, just reading those pawns. So rook e2 was played. King c3. King moves to g7, stopping the capture of this. This is one of our principles. I'm going to take your pawn, but I'm not going to let you take mine. So why do I give up this pawn when you cannot defend that pawn? No, there's not going to be any trade-off. So a4, h5, good move. So anytime I take the pawn on h4, this is already a pass pawn. b4, very logical move. You got to try to create a pass pawn here as quick as possible. So if I don't get this pawn in a good time, you can actually try to create a pass pawn and actually make black worry about that. So rook to h2, knight checks, king moves, knight to c7, threatening to take the pawn on a6. Check. You have to make sure every move is a check. King moves back, rook takes, knight takes. Rook attacks the g pawn. Attacking the g pawn, clearing the path for the h pawn. a5 is played. Of course, you can't play b5 here because I'm just going to take this, and you can't push because I'm going to take that, and yeah, just lose it. So it makes a lot of sense. So in this position, a5 is played. Now I don't have to take this pawn right away. I just have to raise my pawn all the way down. Time is very precious in this position. Pawn push, pawn push, pawn push, pawn push, pawn push. We don't want that stuff. So what do? We check, and then we go all the way down. We're trying to get a queen. We're stopping them from getting a queen. Very wicked of us, but that's the game. That's the way the game is killed out. You have to kill or be killed. So knight goes to c5. Of course, the idea is to try to connect this pawn, but it's a little too late. When the queen gets on the board, everything changes. It's like a lion, moving to a part of the jungle where there are animals. You just see people fleeing. So once there's a queen on the board, everything changes. h6, sorry. Queen to c6. Nobody moves. If anybody moves, somebody gets hurt. King to c4, queen to b6, stopping the pawn from going to a7, because I'm going to snap that, and you cannot move this, and I'm going to snap. And after that move, black is victorious. White resigned. So after this game, Carissa Yip is on 8 out of 8. Wow. I pray for our other opponents. It's not easy playing. Apart from the fact she's a strong player, apart from the fact she just got back from the Olympia with very good result, she has 8 out of 8. It's very intimidating. You just pray to God, God help you, because it's going to be very hard. Of course, we can't stop her. It's going to be very hard to stop her. So these are the two games we're going to go over from the U.S. Closed Chess Championship, the women's section. And I think the game continues later today, which is the 21st of October 2024. So this is the brief recap I just decided to bring based on these two games. And of course, we're going to definitely try to get some more games before the end of the tournament. Especially that game where Karana swindled Yo and just made Yo lose it. All right, that's it for now. Check out the game. Let me see what you think. Your comments, your likes, your subscribe, your everything are welcome. Thank you. Take care. God bless and see you soon. Bye for now.